Welcome to the Borgen Podcast, the only English language show about fictional Danish politics. On our show, we explore the people, events, and parties that make up the fictional Danish parliament on Borgen. I'm one of your hosts, Amy, coming to you from Istanbul, Turkey, and I am, as always, joined by my good friend and co-host Chantal, who broadcasts from her room with a fabulous view in Toronto, Canada. Today, I'm going to be talking about episode 7, season 1, episode 7, which is basically about surveillance and the lines between private life and public life. So let's get into it. How are you doing, Chantal?
I'm good, Amy. I just made a nice big cup of coffee to enjoy while I'm listening to you go over episode 7. So
nice.
I'll
be. You enjoy, and I'll do the talking.
You get to work.
Perfect. So episode 7 is about surveillance and the lines between what happens in private versus what happens in public. And that's something obviously important to anyone in public office. The setup for exploring this theme comes when workers removing light fixtures from the Social Solidarity Party's rooms find a tiny hidden surveillance camera. This kicks off a drama with intelligence and Troels Hugsonhaven, the Minister of Justice, the PM's office, and the leader of the Social Solidarity Party, who is a woman named Anne-Sophie Lindekroon. Lindekroon has a history with Brigitte because Brigitte encouraged her as a young activist to go into politics. Bent describes her role to Anne-Sophie as being a mentor figure, actually, even though Brigitte kind of denies that. The Social Solidarity mods share some of the left-leaning views. So, of course, the Social Solidarity are more left than the moderates, which is Brigitte's party, of course. The theme of surveillance also shows up in a few people's personal lives as well. Philip and Brigitte are facing a lot of tension because she's not home much, and he is attracting the attention of one of his 22-year-old students. Additionally, Katrine is under scrutiny from her coworkers in a lighthearted way about her new boyfriend, Benjamin, the trainer from the gym at TV1. And of course, Casper can hardly keep his opinion to himself about it, and it affects their working relationship a little bit. So when the cameras are discovered in the Social Solidarity Party's rooms, it comes to light that the camera, based on expert analysis, which is eventually uncovered at TV1, is probably the property of intelligence. And so this is hugely problematic, as it is illegal to bug a legal party's headquarters. And also Social Solidarity has the seats that are basically keeping the government's coalition together because they support Brigitte's moves. Hugsonhaven, the Minister of Justice, has to look into it and finds out that Hesselbo, the previous PM, had set the camera up in that location because the rooms were originally used by a radical publisher called Reaction, and they let the rooms to certain parties on the EU terrorist watch list. And here they mentioned 2 specific groups, and one of them is the PKK, which is a real, politically active group that has committed acts of violence in Turkey. So that kind of adds a little veritas to the whole thing. And Hugsonhaven says he can find reasonable explanations and that the problem can be solved. But of course, Lindekroon wants an apology and some concessions made because of this error, right? So she wants an intelligence watchdog, and she wants to head up some hearings about how intelligence and surveillance are carried out. Casper advises Brigitte, as does Bent, to keep her distance and let it be handled as an issue of the Ministry of Justice. However, Hugsonhaven is under a lot of pressure because it comes to light that Lindekroon, at a party some 6 years ago, made remarks about kidnapping Hesselbo's kids so that he can know the feeling of losing his own children, because he was backing involvement in, I think, the Iraq War. Lindekroon doesn't actually mean it. She was likely just making a point, and it was at a party. So there was it was obviously some kind of, social thing, and people were drinking. And so I think she's just making a rhetorical point. I don't think it was ever an actual plan. And this information, this tape, is not released to the public immediately. In a parliamentary debate, Hugsonhaven kind of ends up condemning himself by saying that Lindekroon has some sympathies to certain groups, and there may be reasons to be surveilling her party. This, however, unlocks the chance of a vote of non-confidence, which could topple the government. And Brigitte is furious with Hugsonhaven, well, actually disappointed. She gets furious with him later. And expects him to resign and make an apology. He is very upset. She says he can make a comeback in a cabinet reshuffle and that it will all be fine. but he has other plans. And when he leaves that meeting with Brigitte, he immediately calls Kruse, the head of the intelligence, and gets on the phone with him. Meanwhile, at TV1, while all the press happens around this scandal and it appears that Huxenhaven may have to resign, a package from a watchdog that has the tape of Linda's crone saying the stuff about the kidnapping of Hesselbo's kids comes across their desk. Okay. Katrine rightly points out that it was an off-the-cuff remark at a party, and you can tell from the background noise, and it's not something that was ever a real possibility, though I suppose it needs to be treated like one, and that it is Huxenhaven's attempt to save himself by throwing Anne-Sophie under the bus. And I feel that's actually slightly connected to episode 5 on gender equality. So any man in power will sacrifice a less experienced woman, especially to save his own neck. And this tape also, the appearance of this tape also reveals that Huxenhaven specifically ignored Brigitte's directives, and then she has to deal with him in a very harsh way. In a post-news show meeting in the PM's office, Bent, Brigitte, and Casper have to come up with something to deal with the mess. Bent and Casper point out that it now looks like intelligence and the Ministry of Justice has actually done something right, since they've uncovered this terrible news of the social solidarity leading discussing a kidnapping, which even has information in that tape like, I know where the kids go to school, you just have to plan it out properly. And social solidarity also has this association with the radical publisher who hosted people from these so-called terrorist groups, even if the connection is somewhat tenuous. The rooms were released to the party, the surveillance was of the publisher who hosted these alleged terror groups, and there's some overlap of occupancy there. So it's a little bit mixed up. It may not even be that they were specifically targeting social solidarity, but that's how it ended up happening. So Brigitte has to remember Bent's advice about friends in the castle when she first became PM. You can't have any. You have to be able to dismiss whoever you need to and defend the state and keep the government stable and in power. So poor Anne-Sophie is the one who gets pushed out of her position and not Huxenhaven. He played it very smooth to save his own neck. He ends up looking like a hero based on the revealing of this threatening stuff from this young upstart in this leftist party, right? Brigitte, though, although she accepts this move from Huxenhaven, he's forced her hand. She has to concede to what he's done because that information about Anne-Sophie is now in the public. But she doesn't just like make him apologize. She basically tells him that as far as I'm concerned, you were fired at 9 a.m. this morning. You're politically dead to me. And he better not come to her office with no reason. So she's super harsh with him. He seriously messed up, actually. In a way, both Anne-Sophie and Brigitte get pushed around again by power-seeking men who will undermine orders from superiors, especially female superiors, to save themselves, rather than taking the actual ethical route and admitting wrongdoing in the first place, which would have smoothed over the whole episode, but made Huxenhaven look a little bit bad. But instead, he completely sacrifices Anne-Sophie. Instead of taking a minor hit, he throws a major hit to her, and he comes out looking unscathed. The surveillance theme tracks along in the subplots as well. Katrine, who is up for a journalism prize, has a gala to go to. She gets pressure from her coworkers to bring her new BF, Benjamin the trainer, because why not? Everybody, all the women in the office are like, oh my God, he's so hot. Do we get to see him in a tux? Oh my God. I don't think he's that hot, but anyway. And for some reason, she seems to be hesitant to be seen out in public with him. And he points this out. He's like, we just meet and have sex and don't go out or see friends as a couple. We don't do anything. And he's a little bit hurt by this, I think. And I think Katrine also feels like he's not good enough for her either. He may be hot, but he lacks that interest in the political world that fuels Katrine's drive and intelligence, something she did have in her relationship with Casper, who's clearly very jealous of Benjamin and never fails to make a snide remark at any given opportunity. And he's so jealous that even though he consistently chases other women, he constantly pines after Katrine. And in this episode, he purposely wastes her time in a pointless meeting because they agree not to discuss things. And so she shows up for this meeting with him and he's like, yeah, I have nothing for you, sorry. And basically kicks her out. And I'm pretty sure that's motivated by jealousy. It's not motivated by work or anything else. He's so ridiculous. He's like a hurt high school boy. It's just terrible. In Brigitte's home life, she starts to feel the need to keep an eye on Philip, whose little 22-year-old student shows up at the house How is this possible? You mentioned this when we were talking offline. How is it random people just show up at the prime minister's house?
I
But
don't know.
anyway,
I
I
don't
know
know.
it's so bizarre to me, right? Like, how is she like that occurred to me too when I watched this episode. And I was like, how does she just ride up on her bike and be like, oh, hi, Philip, check my
Yeah.
application? So she shows up and she asks Philip to help her apply for an internship at the National Bank. But she comes to their house more than once to do this. And Brigitte gets so suspicious that she checks Philip's email, which she denies when he asks, but it's kind of obvious. And like, I think they both overlook the fact that he pretends to believe her and she pretends she didn't do it. So it's like, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, but that is another form of surveillance, right? It touches on the surveillance theme. And she gets so annoyed that she actually directly asks if he's having an affair with her because she left a scarf and brought some kind of cookies or something with her to their house. He says he won't be pulled into that kind of conversation and that he misses the company of other adults. Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, from what, a 22-year-old student?
Yeah, you're not going to get adult company from a 22-year-old student. And they fight about Brigitte's absences from home. And she points out that it is her preference, that it's not her preference, actually. She doesn't want to be missing out on the kids' lives, but there isn't really an option to change that. Crises constantly happen in government and she has to deal with them. And she has to deal with him too. It's like he forgets, like I said in the previous episode, it's like he forgets she's not just running an office, but running the nation. The kids miss her. Poor Magnus is even wetting his pants, and Brigitte knows that her absence is affecting them, but she has to, be absent sometimes. So the overriding on this episode, poses the question, when is public public and when is private private? How much of a private life is anyone in public office allowed to have? When do off the cuff remarks come back and bite you? And how do you draw a work-life balance when all anyone can do is work for the country that elected them? And yeah, that's my summary of that episode. It wasn't very heavy. It wasn't as heavy as like the episode before this one with the terrorism plot and stuff, but it's slightly connected. The theme again of terrorism comes up and surveillance. And so it's kind of thematically connected, but the actual drama was lower key.
Was less, sure. Yeah. Well, I like what you did here about linking surveillance to these people's public and professional lives. And even Katrine, Katrine is a important character, but she's certainly behind Brigitte in the series because Brigitte's the main person. But I like what you did about surveillance. And as you were talking, it made me think about Katrine is under surveillance, not just being a journalist on camera, but also off camera with this guy, Benjamin, and showing up in an award ceremony. Now, everyone knows who Katrine is if you watch the news. So they're going to be surveilling her and watching her. Is she single? Is she dating someone? Yeah. Who's this guy? Is that the boyfriend? Is it her brother? And then in response to what you were saying about, you commented a little bit about Benjamin. I think he is like a clueless puppy. I think he's innocent and he's fun and he's good to take your mind off of stress. And, in our jobs, we have a lot of stress, but also in her job, she's got a lot of stress. So if there was this sort of boy toy figure where, when he comes over, there's absolutely no thought about politics or heavy conversations. It's just about light fun and laughing. And
he doesn't even know who Hoxenhaven is. Like, no, he doesn't even know who the minister. He has no clue.
He doesn't. And I always ask myself, like, is he a good match for her? And the answer is if she someone simple and fun, like I said, some little boy toy to spend a few hours with to take her mind off of stress, he's perfect.
But a friend with benefits.
Friends with benefits. But ultimately, if she wants a partner, somewhat of an equal, this guy is not it.
Not for her. Yeah. They're completely
the intellectual stimulation is not there. And, I don't know if it was in this episode or another episode, but like I think she had asked him if he watches the news or does he know this minister or something? And he was like, no.
It's in this episode. Yeah. He's like, no.
It's in this episode.
And he actually says something that's kind of true. Like, he says, how come your world is more important than my world? I don't ask you to keep up on amino acids.
Exactly.
That's a fair question actually from him, but it also shows their incompatibility. Like,
right.
Even if that's not your number one focus, like politics or the media or whatever is not your number one focus. If that's your partner's job, you should know a little bit about it. You know what I mean? Like, have the courtesy of knowing something about your partner's job.
Yes, and take interest in when she's talking to you.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I mean, I think Casper is such a good match for her because he hits everything. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But this guy, he hits
He
everything.
does hit everything. That's part of the problem. That's why they broke up.
Yes, but this guy, I mean, I think and is it partially her, not, I don't want to say fault, but is it her high expectation that, every partner that she has or man that she spends company and time with, will he be interested in her career? No.
No, of course not. Yeah.
We're not all interested in everyone's career. And I think, yeah, you can become interested in your partner's career over time,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
few months that they've known each other. So,
Yeah.
and
It's
then,
like 2 months or something. It's very fresh. 2 months
yeah,
is nothing.
and then exactly, you're still getting to know each other. But then in response to, the surveillance about Hesselbo, now my remark to Lyndon Crone is that anybody, including regular average Joes like you and I mean, everywhere we go, even us, we're not politicians, we still have to be careful with what we say.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Oh, especially here. Like in the last episode, I was a little hesitant talking about the political situation in Turkey because I don't want to sound biased. Because I'm not supposed to, like that's not my role here. I'm a foreigner here as well. And it may, it's like kind of those kinds of topics don't get discussed in public a lot here, actually, to be honest. So it's kind of a little, but I think I was fairly neutral. Like I stay out of it as
I
much as
think you were
possible.
neutral too. I think you were neutral too. You were just describing the
The
landscape
situation,
background of
yeah.
it. Yeah. But with Lyndon Crone here, especially, being a young woman up and coming in politics, she had Brigitte as a mentor. That's great. Everyone all the time has to be aware of surveillance because now we're in the
Yep.
era of smartphones.
Yep.
Anyone can take a picture, record something, upload it to Twitter, and there you go. Thousands and tens of thousands and millions of people will know what you're saying. So,
Of
um,
course.
yeah, she
And
have to be careful.
there's security cameras everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Everywhere. Like I probably walk past 50 security cameras every day. And I mean, okay, I work in a school, so there's security cameras all around the school, of course. Um, but they're also on the street. Like I know, like sometimes I actually look for them just to see where they are. And like I ride my bike to work. So I ride my bike to school, and in the mornings, there's actually this fenced garden near the school of this big estate, and they have a pomegranate tree. And I looked up to look at the pomegranates one morning, and I noticed there's like 4 security cameras along the fence. So it's like you can't even look at a tree without getting your picture taken.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy. And like every
So,
bank machine, every supermarket, everywhere has surveillance cameras. We're constantly being filmed,
yeah, and
whether
think,
we're aware of it or not.
I mean, I think that's a good thing because we have to be responsible for our actions. If someone
Yeah,
was
of course.
irresponsible and reckless and dangerous, I would like to think and hope that there is a camera that can help catch them so someone else doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
But coming back here about Lyndon Crone's intentions, I don't think her intentions were ill either. I don't think that she was sitting there plotting for Hesselbo.
No, I think that was purely rhetorical. I
But
think
you see, what
it was just a comment.
It opens her up for bullets.
Criticism.
You know what I'm saying? Like to get hit at with these comments.
Of course.
It's so easy to take that simple, what she was saying, whether she's saying it as a joke or not, but people can easily turn that and say, nope, you're a bad person. You're dangerous. You're
a terrorist. Yeah. And it was an off the cuff remark. Like, like I've been put in Facebook jail for saying things like, like when there's a story about like a horrible abuse or torture or something, like it, like it's too bad that couldn't be done to the perpetrator, something like that. But like maybe with harsher language, because sometimes I run my mouth. And like I've been like banned for saying things like that. So I mean, like people do get surveilled all the time, and like free speech is, a question mark sometimes, a lot of times, actually, much more than people realize, I think.
Yeah.
And it depends on the political environment of where you're living too, because like the media is very controlled by the state here. If you look at, and like other countries around here, like Russia I'm thinking of in particular, right? Because I'm very close to Russia, actually. The closest I've been is 50 km from the border in the mountains in Georgia. But anyway, so I'm right on the border with Russia. They're like across the Black Sea from here. I think Iraq borders on, no, Iran or Iraq, one of them borders on the end of Turkey, the other side. We share borders with Syria. There's a lot of action going on around here. And if you look at freedom of the press statistics, it's not good for this region, generally speaking. So, that's like something that we talk about in media classes at school, actually. So, it varies from place to place, but it's certainly an issue. And like when you're in politics, you have to watch what you say. But also, I think it's really unfair that they targeted her for that. I don't think it's right, but it had to be dealt with.
You're looking for someone as a scapegoat to put all the
yes.
on to preserve their own, as we see with Hoxhaven, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're looking for any scapegoat so that they don't take any hits, right? So that's what happened to Lyndon Crone, unfortunately. You know?
Yeah. And I just thought it was interesting to see, like in the previous episode, Henrietta gets knocked down. And then in this episode, and Sophie gets knocked down. It's like there, and maybe this is also proving that Brigitte does not have a pro-female bias, even though she's supposed to be a feminist and stuff, because like she just axed 2 female ministers, right? It's a very tricky situation. I mean, she obviously wanted to get rid of Hoxhaven.
It is, but well, Hoxhaven is more senior than Henriette. And,
of course, yeah.
Lyndon Crone.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe Brigitte is very fair, and that when she got rid of Henriette in season 5, episode 5, it was warranted.
Of course it was. Yeah. Of course it was.
And she's not going to compromise herself as a person and as a prime minister to keep on someone who's a fraud.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
And she was a fraud.
Lying about that. I can't trust you to work for me. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. So, and like if someone who will falsify like academic records from universities, what else would they do? You can't have them looking at like government files and stuff.
No,
it's not okay.
No way.
Like that's a very big question mark. Yeah,
absolutely. So is there anything else you want to say about episode 7?
No, it was interesting to see. It was nice to see the kind of heavy-handed political surveillance business with the like everybody making fun of Katrina and her new boyfriend. I thought that was a nice balance. It was like a little bit of comic relief after a couple of heavier episodes.
Yeah, and I kind of like them, bugging Katrina about it a bit, because I think her line of work, she has a tendency to be very serious, as we all do at moments in our jobs, right? But it's nice when someone can offer a bit of levity or a bit of, take off
lightheartedness.
Exactly. And just, and it's fun too. I mean, who's Katrine's new boy toy? Let's figure that out. So I think it's, I think it was a good balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm enjoying watching Casper lose his shit. That just cracks me up. Like watching him get all jealous and be like, oh, the trainer. Oh, why don't you spin off and let the adults talk? Like, come on.
I know.
Grow up.
He's so jealous. He's jealous.
So over the top. Yeah. It's just gross.
Well, he can't contain his jealousy, I don't think. And
yeah. And I think that's a good segue into your episode, because your episode has a lot about Casper. Yeah. So this is episode 8 that I'm going to be talking about. So it starts off with Michael Laugesen. We learn that he writes a book about his time in Parliament, and Casper goes to ML Media, which is the company he started where he runs this newspaper, Express. Casper goes to ML Media to ask Han for a copy of the book. She is resistant. Outwardly, she's resistant, but in the end, she slips him a list of all the book critic names who presumably have a copy that he can contact to try and get a copy of the book. Brigitte goes to Magnus's school to talk about Magnus and the stress he may be feeling, as we know he is wetting his pants in the previous episodes. And the teacher suggests that it might be due to stress at home, which is causing him to do this. Later, when Brigitte goes home, she asks Philip if he's happy, and as he's loading the dishwasher, and he answers in a matter-of-fact way to say he's slogging away and that I will get by it. And she says to him,
well, if you can have anything, what would it be? And he says, quote, a different job. I'd love to run a company. A headhunter approached him about a job. And he says, quote, at the moment, I was actually happy. So he's suggesting that they send the kids to boarding school, which to me is a privileged cop out. It's only people with money that can say, well, now I'm getting bored and tired of being the stay-at-home dad. Let's send the kids to boarding school. So I feel that Philip is perhaps feeling what many parents feel at home, who are the stay-at-home parent, that it is a limited job with no day job, no traveling, no response, no intense day job, because as we know, he was a lecturer at the university, right?
Yeah.
No traveling, big responsibilities, and the sacrifice because of the kids. Philip is getting fed up of taking on this type of role. Brigitte asks him if he wants to quit. And to me, it was a bit of a ridiculous question because as Amy and I talked about in a previous episode, if the table was reversed, would a man ask his wife, do you want to quit being a wife and mother? Do you need a break? You know what I mean? So she's also the PM and he should give her more slack. His wife is the most important person in the country. And again, I draw references to the Netflix series, The Crown, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And it's how we see the queen as the queen first. The queen is not a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a friend. She's a queen first, and it's her duty and responsibility to serve the people. So I see direct parallels to Brigitte as the prime minister on this, and he's just not getting that. As you said, Amy, this is the episode where we meet Casper's mother, and she shows up to the workplace at the reception area, and then she goes outside. Casper greets his mother outside. He comes up from behind her, and without saying a word, he grabs the back of her elbow and starts walking her away from the parliament. And the first words to her is, quote, didn't I tell you I don't want to see you? If you want to see me, call me. So I thought that was really abrupt. And I was kind of startled by that because it's not how one normally meets their mother, but we don't know anything about them, right? So this is where, she's there to tell him the father is dead, and she calls him Kenneth, not Casper. She calls him Kenneth. And she tells him that she's proud of his work he's doing, but she needs his help with the funeral arrangements. And he tells her to call the city and that he has not been at home since he's 12 years old, which really startled me. Like, oh my God, 12 years old is a baby. So
the big question is, what happened?
What happened? Exactly. So immediately my interest is piqued, right? He's not been home since he was 12 years old, and he has no wish to go home now. And he leaves her standing there, but tells her as he's walking away that he will call the undertaker. And when he goes upstairs, San, the secretary to Brigitte, asks him if he wants to show his mother around the PM's office. And he tells San that was not his mother. It was an old housekeeper, a senile woman who had thought of Casper as her son. And to me, this shows he has no respect for his mother. So what happened is what all of us want to know.
Yeah. Or that he's hiding something, which is something that Katrine has said to him all you have is secrets. So we know he's got something hidden in the background.
Because she's alluded to it right before even our curiosity got sparked around him and his past. So we knew something is a bit off with his past, right? But we don't know what yet. So next we see Brigitte. She's contemplating taking a vacation. She's in the office and there's a gray-haired guy that works for her. And he says, we rule Denmark. No one has time for taking a vacation. The PM has to take a vacation for the sake of optics, but no one could really afford time off. And so she turns to him and asks him if his wife understands. And his response is, the current one, yes. The last two, no. So
I think that's her permanent secretary, right? It's like the civil servant that organizes everything for the PM is always in the office. Like the permanent secretary handles the affairs of it's like the PM's personal assistant, basically.
You know what? I have a feeling they're all at work all of the time.
All the time.
And I believe it because in many jobs, it's not just the boss and the boss's right hand, it's everybody. So I believe it when I kind of laughed because I'm like, yes, I do believe this. I know what it's like to be on a busy team. So at home, Brigitte suggests to Philip that they go on a family vacation. He wants to go to their friend's cottage, and she tells him that intelligence will not have enough time to clear it and that they should go to Marienborg, which is the PM's official residence. So at Marienborg, they arrive. Philip wants to have pizza for dinner. And the head staff at Marienborg says she makes dinner for when the PM is in residence. And he asks, Can't we cook ourselves? And the staff member says it isn't customary. And then she looks at Brigitte and tells her that what is for dinner? It's pork tenderloin, loin, and cream sauce, and asks Brigitte if 6 p.m. is okay for dinner. Brigitte says yes, and Philip looks uncomfortable and out of place. Philip wants Brigitte to ask her, the staff member, to take time off. And he's completely out of line here with these comments, because to me, it shows he's got no manners or respect or consideration. He shows no adaptability or open mind. He's not flexible, and he's making the PM look foolish, in my opinion. And
also, I think, I just think they don't know the protocol because they've never been there before. I don't think they were expecting to have full staff.
If we show up somewhere and we don't know the protocol, you wait and do as you're told.
Yes, true.
Right.
Yes.
You figure, you listen to the tone and you listen to what the people are saying. Right. So Brigitte says, he says he's not flexible, and he's asking her to ask the staff member to take time off. And Brigitte says, I don't think I can. And Philip says, really, I thought you were the PM, which I thought was completely disrespectful.
That's so disrespectful.
Shows very poor attitude on his part. He's behaving childish and sour, and he does this within minutes of the arrival, even before they step foot into the house. So I was like really put off by that. So then the next scene is Casper's mother's house. We see flashbacks of when he was a boy and his mother is preparing to leave for a 3-day trip. And the father says, they'll have a good time. They'll have guys' night. And we see more flashbacks to them when he's alone with his father, when the mom is away. And the father alludes, well, not alludes, really. He's doing a sexual game with his son, Casper, to which his hand, well, Kenneth, he was Kenneth.
Yeah, Kenneth.
To which his hand goes under Kenneth's blanket. Kenneth says he can fall asleep and that he's tired. And the father tells him that it will be their little secret. And mom wouldn't understand because she would get angry and upset at Kenneth. So the scene changes to the representative from the funeral home. So that was a flashback. And now the scene is changing. We're going to see the funeral home representative in the house. And he comes to ask Casper what they're going to do with the service. And Casper says he wants the father to be cremated in the pajamas he wore. And as we know, those were the pajamas from those awful nights. So despite Philip acting in poor taste and their arrival at Marienborg, Brigitte arranges to have the staff watch the kids. And she orders expensive champagne, puts on the moves, tries to seduce him. And he says he's not in the mood, and they stop. And I was kind of surprised at this because I could feel he could have made more of an effort to go. But he's asking her to stop, even stopping without even some play. And then he tells her that he's really fed up, and she tells him that he's never in the mood, and he says, you're never home, and she says, we spend every night together, and he says, you come home at 3 a.m. with a computer under your arm. And she alludes to the fact that she's disappointed and says for the first time in a month she's in the mood, and he responds by saying, I can't participate in an official program, I miss my wife. So over to T1. The blonde male reporter, whose name I don't remember, but this is the reporter that often shows up at the parliament. So he's reporting about the book and preludes some of the details of Brigitte's ministers' lives, such as Bent having an affair with someone. Hoxhaven has, quote, homosexual tendencies, and several politicians are threatening to sue for libel. And Casper gets outed as the person who gave the vouchers to Michael Lagesson that, as we know, documented Hesselbo breaking the law by putting on the wife's obscenely high purchases on the government credit card. So TV1 is asking for a comment, and Brigitte leaves the cottage and comes to the parliament to meet with Casper. She wants Casper to comment, and those accused in the book, Bent, Hoxhaven, and Amir, who's another minister of hers.
Environmental minister.
Yep. Bent advises Hoxhaven not to say a word again, say anything, and he's happily married, and that he's happily married for 13 years. There's a rumor that Bent and Yvonne, as we remember, Amy, I think it was one of your early episodes. She's an associate or party member of Hesselbo's. So there's she's rumor,
liberal. I think Liberal Party. I think.
Well, whatever.
The one who he said, oh, she's in my pocket, she'll do whatever I say.
Exactly. So we know they'd worked together for at least 6 years or something. And she was very loyal to Lagesson, or to Hesselbo, rather.
Hesselbo, yeah.
So then the rumor now is that Bent and Yvonne had an affair. And Bent says, yes, he did have an affair with her. And Casper says, if we refrain from gossip, it will look like, if we refrain from gossip, it'll look like idle gossip.
Yeah,
No
exactly.
reaction.
Mhm.
If we want this to work, we keep our mouths shut. So Hoxhaven says to Casper, you have to comment, Casper, the most serious allegations about you and the info in Hesselbo that Lagerson will get a hold of. It's damn specific and what overturned the government. But as we know from later episodes, which we're not going to get into now or discuss, we know Hoxhaven has something bigger to hide.
Yes, he
And
does. Yeah.
he doesn't want any suspicion on him. And that's
Mhm.
why he's trying to pressure Casper. You have to say something, Casper. You have to, refute
Yeah.
these
Once again, Hoxenhaven, who's basically a coward, is trying to put somebody else's neck under the guillotine so he
Yes.
can avoid getting his cut. And he's
Yes.
eventually going to get cut somehow. It's going to come
Yes.
back and bite him.
Yes.
But yeah.
So then Brigitte takes a press conference and she says, gossip doesn't interest me. And then when asked about the voucher, she says, I was aware of the voucher when I rehired Casper. He'll make a statement to the press. So this is the voucher, the receipt
Mhm.
that was found, right? So in a scene alone with Casper, Brigitte says to him, quote, a media advisor must never be a liability to the government. I can't make political sacrifices to save you. So I hope you'll do a good job. So she
Yeah.
leaves Casper. She goes back to the cottage at the Marienborg at dinner time. And Philip makes a sarcastic remark about the meatloaf and says, quote, that's a suitably light dish for summer. So he's being sarcastic. He doesn't approve of the
Yes.
menu. And the daughter, Laura, asks how long they'll stay because she has a plan with a friend. Brigitte and Philip argue, and he says, well, he says to Brigitte, it depends whether or not you'll have time to be with us. You're not really here. Brigitte gives up and says, okay, let's go home. And without a beat, Philip immediately says, fine, let's go. Come kids, go pack. So he doesn't even ask Brigitte if she's okay, does not really care about what she's dealing with, and has no understanding of appreciation of her position. He expects her to shut it all off and never think about work. He underestimates her job and the magnitude and importance of it. And he seems to trivialize it because he wants a wife and a home life. And he has to realize that things and circumstances and people will change and evolve over time. So when they get back to the house now, he gets a call from a headhunter that they're going to make him an offer. And he tells Brigitte he's going to turn it down, but he wants to talk to them first. And she nods her head and goes back outside to bring her bags in. Like she doesn't even have or expect the staff to bring it in. She does it herself, which I like. The family trip was not a success. And also there was a lot of pressure on Brigitte. At the same time, she's also trying to save the government from scandal and disaster. And she's trying to please both sides. And this will never be enough for Philip. So getting towards the end of this episode now, we're at TV1. Casper's being interviewed by Ulrich. Ulrich asks him how he got the receipts that Lagerson eventually got. And Casper says he cannot reveal his sources. Casper says that Brigitte won't sue them. So he gave them to Lagerson Brigitte wouldn't use them. So he gave them to Lagerson because she had a moral issue with it. And Casper says he left Brigitte and didn't get fired, and they discussed everything before he came back. Now, towards the end of the episode now, we see Brigitte at home. It's 11 a.m. Philip is having a beer. He got offered a job. So he was just on a call a few minutes ago, and he got offered a job as a CEO of a northern division of an electronics company in Europe. And he said yes to it. And Brigitte says, well, we agreed you wouldn't. And he says, but the problem is I want to do it. And he goes up to her and she's sitting on the counter and has sex with her. And she's not really into it because she's processing what he said. And the sex is selfish. It's all about him and not about her at all.
Yeah. That was a creepy scene, actually. That really bothered me.
It was creepy because I don't think she really wanted it. And it's almost like he did it to dominate her. Like, I'm going to tell you, I'm taking the job. I'm going to do it. And now I'm going to have my way with you. You know what I mean?
And again, now that his masculinity has been restored, he's in the mood.
Exactly. And again, it was all about him. He didn't pay attention to her. She was just some object there for him, which I think is disgusting. But anyways, Casper and Katrine, this is a good episode in the sense of this is where Casper finally breaks down and tells Katrine that his dad died. And of course, because he's been telling Katrine,
All these lies. Yeah.
yeah, and she's not really sure. So she ends up calling the prime minister's office and she gets San on the phone. And San tells her, yes, he did go to a funeral. So the episode comes to an end with Brigitte at TV1, and she goes on TV to say that Casper made a moral assessment of his actions and that they're past it. He remains one of her most trusted and valuable employees, and she is loyal to those she values. She sticks up for them and supports them. She needs Casper, but we believe she is moral and genuine about the people she cares about. So yeah. So that concludes my summary. Amy, what'd you think of that?
I thought it was really interesting how far Casper buried his abuse with his dad. And I think it speaks to gender roles. Okay. So like women are usually, we're all raised being told like men behave badly to us. Eventually something's going to happen to you, like somebody's going to wolf whistle you or make a comment or touch you or approach you or do something to you that's gross and creepy. That's just the way it is. If you're female, that's just how it's going to be. Right. And this is true for the majority of people that I know, myself included. And I think it's very interesting that women just kind of are expected to cope with these kinds of approaches. Like, I mean, look at even in marriage, that scene with Philip and Brigitte proves that, intimate relations or sexual relations aren't always necessarily completely consensual or wanted by, and like, it's just going to happen sometimes. I'm not saying that was a rape scene because I don't think it exactly was, but it wasn't nice.
No, it wasn't pleasant, and it wasn't about two people relaxing and enjoying each other. It was more like
it's a power thing.
It's a power thing. Exactly. I'm fed up of being told what to do. I'm fed up of being put in my place. Yeah. I am going to take this job and go against what we agreed upon. And then I'm going to dominate you by having my way with you on the counter. And what about, what would have happened if he would have said to her, I really realize you're being torn in so many ways. I want to do something for you. I want to be the one that pleasures you, not me taking what I want. And I want to take care of you, and I want you to feel relaxed when you're home because I know and appreciate you're dealing with so much. He doesn't do that ever.
That's right.
He just, and the part about, I think in your episode, you were talking about, he wants to be in the company of a 22-year-old. You know what I mean?
He doesn't though. He says he misses adult company, and that's not what he's going to get with a 22-year-old. I think that was the point that he made there. But my thing about Casper was, so women are taught to expect unwanted attention, from catcalling to like physical harm. Okay. Like somewhere in that range, something's going to happen to you. Yeah. Just deal with it. Right. It's the way it is. Like girls don't go out late at night, walk in groups, carry your keys in your hand. Don't walk across dark parking lot. The whole business, all that stuff we've been told all our lives.
Yeah. And then looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. And then when abuse happens to a man, what happens? They completely freak out and crumble, and it destroys them because that's not supposed to happen to boys.
Yeah.
And I do know a number of men. I know at least 3 adult men. One I only know partly. One is the brother of someone I know very well. And another one is a really close friend of mine. And all 3 of those men suffered violence at the hands of other men. Okay. One was sexual abuse. One was physical violence. And the third one, I think was also sexual, but I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember because that's just a friend of a friend kind of thing. But the lives of those 2 men who suffered the sexual abuse, one was in high school. Both were in high school. One was sexually abused by a man, another male student, older student in high school. And one was drawn into an affair with his female teacher when he was in his second last year of high school. And the teacher involved, and I find this horrible because I'm a teacher and I can't even imagine doing this. But I guess she might have been younger, like in her 20s or something, like not that much older than him. But that's no excuse because there's a position of power, right?
Mhm.
And both of them struggle in their lives. And here's the one who's had the affair with the teacher. Also, his father abused him when he was a kid, quite badly, like violently. And he's never really addressed or recovered from it because men are just supposed to take hits and that's it.
Yeah, and
Right.
there's no space for them to talk about it.
Yeah.
On the news here, not so long ago, there was a sports figure that did a press conference, and it was all about exposing sexual abuse in a sports team here. And he was on the news, and he was visibly upset and crying. And I just thought, there needs to be more men like this who can speak
Yes.
out and say, I was hurt, I'm not okay about it. And I can't imagine if someone did go through that experience. How do you navigate yourself as an adult in any type of relationship, right? A close
It's
female
really, really
relationship,
hard.
or if you have a female partner, a man has a female
Mhm.
partner. How does he build intimacy without wondering if he'd be hurt by her? you know
Yeah. And like my friend who had the affair with okay, he's more than a friend, was more than a friend. We're not together now, but like, that I think that was a problem in our relationship, like the volatility and the kind of hidden trauma from those experiences affected his relationship with me. I'm sure that I'm sure because
yeah.
he couldn't open up. He couldn't feel things the same way normal people feel things because there's an automatic mistrust. Like I feel close to you, you're going to hurt me,
Yeah. But the
because
other
that's the natural
observation,
response.
my straight female friends tell me, the problem with a lot of men, i.e., the male partners of these straight women, is that they don't have community the way women do.
Yeah, they
And
don't.
a lot of these straight men, they look towards their female partners as everything. So they're the
Yes.
best friend, the lover, the mother, and to
The
me, it's
healthcare
dangerous.
worker,
The
the
healthcare
bank.
worker, everything, the
Yeah.
housekeeper. And, to me, it's very dangerous because one person can't be everything to you.
Yeah,
And
that's a heavy, heavy burden.
inevitably, even if you're madly in love with each other and you're together for 60 years, one of you is going to die. So,
Mhm.
unless you die together, but how will you take care of yourself? And that's the problem, I think. And I hear this from my straight woman friends, that when men go through problems or crises in their life, they have no one to talk to except this woman, which becomes very
Yes.
burdensome. And that may
Mhm.
sound horrible. Your partner is not your burden, but you need different perspectives that are not, let's say, biased, because talking to your partner is too close of you need to have male friends. You need to go out and bond with other men
Yeah.
and say, hey, I'm having a problem with my girlfriend. I don't know what to do. Does your girlfriend do this? Or how should I
Mhm.
deal with it? Or I'm feeling these pressures. Men don't have that. And I think it's the way they're conditioned from
Yeah.
young boys,
I
right?
hope that's beginning to change. And like, I mean, I've seen or at least heard like I've seen or heard of like some male friendships in people my age and older where those boundaries have been broken down somewhat. It's like where guys actually get together and talk about how they don't talk about things, and then they talk about all the things. And like a couple podcasts that I listen to actually, and at the end, the two guys are always like, "I love you, bro. I love you, dude." Like they just say that, and it's like it's so nice to hear a
Yeah.
guy say to his friend, "I love you," without
Yeah.
it being weird.
Yeah.
It's just a thing. And like I see that a lot of times in Turkish boy relationships. Like boys are very physical with each other here. They're very huggy. They will sit with their arms around each other and stuff. And it's not like a gay thing, I
Mhm.
think. So, okay, sometimes it might be, but it's mostly like a bro thing. Like there's a category of friend here called like your blood brother. And so there's a lot of this like male bonding stuff, but it's almost like too macho. So
Mhm.
it's good that there's that, but it's like, what purpose is that really like? What does that really
Yeah, it's like a
symbolize?
mask, right? It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're pretending that you're close, but you really don't cut yourself and bleed all over the other person with your problems, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
say, you and I, we're such close friends for so long. I could say we have that friendship where we tell each other all the personal stuff that's bothering us and upsetting us, or the good things as well. I don't feel a filter with you or any other close friend that I have.
Mhm.
But I feel that if it, like in Casper's situation, perhaps if he had another and it doesn't have to be a man, it could be like a woman, anybody, you know, a family member that he trusts.
Why didn't he tell Katrine? Why didn't he ever tell her? Instead, he just made up these stories about his father being a military helicopter designer and shit, like a bunch of nonsense. Whereas if he says like, I had a really awful relationship with my father and I don't like to talk about it, I'm not ready to talk about it with you, but maybe sometime I will. Like even that much would be like, oh, okay, there's something going on, instead of just these weird lies.
He could have said that. I do believe he loves Katrine, but maybe he doesn't know how to articulate what you just articulated, but also he's scared that if he gets close to the topic, it'll bring him uneasy.
It'll bust out.
Yeah. And he would rather just, like, you know, he changed his name. He was Kenneth before. He changed his name. A name is a very big deal. A name is your identity. So if you're going to go through the effort to change your name and you haven't been home since you were 12 years old, this tells me you really want to shut it down. But the problem is when you become close to another adult in that way, you're really hiding a big part of yourself by not saying it. Right?
Yes, exactly.
So I don't know. I thought I thought this was a good episode to expose Philip, because again, this is slowly brewing. You know, it's very obvious to me he can't handle being second. He can't handle her obligations and duties of prime minister. He's unable to shift his focus and go with the flow and support her. You know, the way many women turn their lives upside down to, you know, there was a saying, you know, I don't stay home and look after the kids for free. I do it because I'm giving you the chance to develop your career. You know
exactly.
I mean? So
he's taking a very selfish view, actually.
Absolutely. And he's struggling to negotiate her as the wife and prime minister, you know, and he seems for it to be okay as long as she doesn't bring it home, but it's impossible not to bring
it's impossible not to bring it home.
Even in our jobs, we're not the prime minister, but I'm constantly thinking about work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I was saying,
I know you are as well.
Yeah, I got text from a coworker right before we started recording this. And for the record, it was close to 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. And mind you, on a Wednesday during our term break. So I'm technically on holiday. I brought home 5 packs of exams to grade. I spent the first 3 days of my break grading exams. I'm spending Sundays doing grading. There's no time off for teachers. Not really.
There's no time.
I'm working. Yeah, I've got a conference next weekend. Like we're busy. It's running. It's like hit the ground running. You stop in June.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So if in our simple lives, if we bring work home, and I'm constantly working, you know, and now
we work all the time.
Pandemic, we're working from home, you know, 3 days a week. And it's just like, do I turn the computer off? No, because I always have work on my mind. So so I guess that's the conclusion then to this episode. There's nothing else I want to say. Is there anything else you want to say about?
I just think the whole situation with Casper is so sad, you know, because like it speaks to all his problems, like his bad relationships with women, the fact that he can't be intimate with anyone really. Like it's like he's using that trauma as fuel for his like promiscuity and lack of intimacy with everyone. Like he has to play this cool character all the time. And it's just a lie. And it's just so sad, you know?
Well, I think, yes. And I think that's directly related to, and the reason for his inability to make a strong emotional connection, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because
and it's just so tragic.
Yeah.
You know?
It is tragic, but I don't know.
I find child abuse storylines really disturb me. I think it's because I work with kids, you know, so it's like, you know, that I know that something's happening to some kid I'm teaching. I know that I mean, I don't know for sure, but like statistically it has to be happening to somebody, you know, and it's just like awful. And just even thinking about it just upsets me. Like it makes me rage with anger. Like, how dare you touch a child?
Oh,
like,
I know. Children are so innocent, full of love and innocence.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but they don't deserve that. Well, it's like, look, kid, sometimes I got those kids and it's like, look, if you're going to cheat, at least don't get caught. If you're going to do it bad properly. Come on.
Well, it comes from their home, I think,
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
and
And
how they're-
privilege and stuff. And there's many, many, many factors, but we
Yeah.
don't need to talk about that here.
No, so all right, so we will wrap it up then. We'd like to thank our
Yes.
listeners for joining us on this episode. You can check us out on our website, theborgenpodcast.com, where all of our podcast episodes are archived and you can learn more information about us and the show. We'd like to thank our good friend Garth Jensen for providing the intro and outro music. Thank you very much, Garth. And lastly, don't forget to check us out on all social media platforms. We are there and we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to connect with us and share what's on your mind by using the hashtag #TheBorgenPodcast or by sending us an email or voice memo at theborgenpodcast.com.
Perfect.
All right. I'll see you later, Amy.
Yeah, catch you for the next episode. In the next episode we record, we will be closing out season 1, I believe.
That's right. Very exciting.
So that will be exciting. Yeah, those will be some peak episodes. It'll be good.
All right. I'll see you then.
All right, take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.